In this video, we're going to learn more about Skill 4, Graph Summation. In Skill 4, Graph Summation, we're going to work on combining data sets to calculate sums. How do we combine data sets? Well, if you read the words and or, we should add data sets together. There are also some other important words you should be on the lookout for that might require you to combine data sets. Words like less than, more than, at least, fewer than, and in total. Those words will indicate that we might need to combine data sets. So let's first look at this graph. This graph shows us the U.S. cities with the most homeless people, and it shows us based on city or county. The first question asks us, how many homeless people live in New York City or San Francisco? So I need to find the number of people who are homeless, who live in New York City or San Francisco. The first thing I need to do is identify each one of those terms individually. I can see in New York City, I have 78,604 individuals. And I see that in San Francisco, which is right here, I have 8,035 people. All right, and it says how many homeless people live in New York or in San Francisco. So to do this on my calculator, I need to add the following numbers. I need to do 78,604 plus 8,035. And when I do that, I get 86,639 people. The next question says, in total, how many homeless people live in the state of California according to this graph? Well, it's really helpful because I can look at this graph and I notice that the state that every one of these cities or counties is in is actually in this bar. And I know California is CA. So I'm looking for all of the cities and counties where it says CA, indicating that it's California. So Los Angeles City and County is California. Seattle King County is Washington, so I don't care about that one. The next one, which is San Jose or Santa Clara County, is California. This is also California, 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 California. And so now I, on my calculator, need to add all of these numbers together to get the total number of homeless people living in California according to this graph. And when I put all of this information into my calculator and add it all together, I find that the total number of homeless people living in the state of California, according to this graph, is 98,144 people. Let's look at this graph next. This graph shows people's favorite way to eat candy corn. I love candy corn. So I am one of those people who just puts that whole piece of candy corn in my mouth at a time, by the handful. I love candy corn. But this question says, what percent of people eat candy corn starting with the yellow end or starting with the white end? That means we need to add information together. I can see that 10% of people start with the yellow end, and then I can see 43% of people start with the white end. Please know that this is not a correct answer. You cannot say 10% and 43%. That is incorrect. We need to add these together to find the total percent. So I do 10% plus 43%, and I know the total percent is 43%. Let's look at this next graph. This graph shows where did Americans find inspiration for their Halloween costumes in 2016. The first question says, what percent of people found their Halloween costume inspiration from online resources? So I need to look at the x-axis of this graph where it says source, and I need to determine which of these are online resources. Well, this one says online search, so that's definitely an online resource. This one says Facebook, which is online, Pinterest, which is online, Instagram and other social medias, and YouTube. So now that I have identified the sources on the x-axis, I need to find those percentages on the y-axis. So online search is 35%, and I need to add that with Facebook, which looks like it's between 15 and 20%. I'm going to call it 18%. Pinterest, which I'm also going to call 18%. Then Instagram and other social media, which is 15%, plus YouTube, which I think is about 12%. And remember, I don't just list all of those, I need to actually add them together. So on my calculator, I will add 35 plus 18 plus 18 plus 15 plus 12. And I will get 98%. Wonderful. It's important to know that the survey respondents were allowed to choose more than one source, so our number might be more than 100%. Not a big deal. The next question here asks, how many sources did at least 20% of people use? So I am going to find this 20% line, and I'm going to draw this line across. And I'm going to look which sources were above 20%. And I see, well, it was online, search, that's above 20%. Costume shop was above 20%. And didn't wear one was above 20%. So total, 3 sources had at least 20% of people using them to research their Halloween costumes in 2016. This graph looks a little bit different. In this graph, we're comparing habitat loss to the reason why different animals lost those habitats. We can see this really helpful key up here, which tells us what each of those 5 colors represent. In the first question, it says exploitation, which is this yellow color, caused at least 25% of habitat loss for which animals? So I'm going to look for that yellow color at least being 25% long. So 25% long is about this long, right? So I'm going to look here at birds. This does not appear to be 25% long. This reptiles and amphibians, I think looks like it might be about 25% long. So I'm going to say reptiles and amphibians. Here, I can see in mammals, it's definitely more than 25% long because it's longer than 50 to 75%. So I know mammals will go in that category. And last but not least, I know fish definitely will too because that yellow bar is definitely longer than 25%. So I'm going to say fish. Wonderful. The next question asks us to answer this. It says invasive species or disease impacted which animal group the most? So which animal group was impacted the most by invasive species and disease? So here's invasive species and disease, and I'm looking for the longest purple bar. So this is a short purple bar. This one's pretty short. And these two both look pretty long. And then you have to make an educated decision which one you think looks longer. And I think the reptiles and amphibians looks longer. So I am going to say reptiles and amphibians were most impacted by invasive species or disease. So this graph is a little bit different. This graph shows us the U.S. Western wildland acres burned in millions of acres. The first question says, in how many years did less than 1 million acres of wildfire burn in Oregon? So one of the important pieces of information to know about this graph is that Oregon, which is this orange color, includes that red down below, right? So here, when I'm looking in 2002, in Oregon, about 1.2 million acres burned. But I'm looking to see where were they less than 1 million acres. So I am going to go ahead and I'm going to sketch this line about here at 1 million acres. And I'm going to see when there was less than 1 million acres burned. So let's look. In 2002, I think there were 1 million acres. So that was not less than 1 million. In 2002, in 2004, 2003, 2004, 2005, 2006, I think, 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010, and 2011, all for sure below that line. In 2012, we're above that line. In 2013, we're below it. In 2014, 2015, we're way above that million line. In 2016, we're below it. In 2017, I think we're right below it. We're getting close. So I'm going to write 2017. And then in 2018, we're definitely above that line. And then 2019 and 2020. So those are all the years where there was less than 1 million acres burnt in Oregon. So I'm going to count how many years that is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So in 14 years. Great. The next question says that in total, approximately how many of acres of wildland burned in California, Oregon, and Washington in 2005? So I need to look at this 2005 mark, which is right here. It's this bar right here. And I need to see about how many acres I think that is. Well, it looks like it's about 5 million acres, or 0.5 million acres. So I'm going to write 0.5 million acres. Perfect. Hopefully this video has helped you understand our skill 4, graph summation, a little bit better. And hopefully you feel like you can now combine data sets to create sums based on information given on graphs.